new era of Kamen Rider is here with Kamen Rider 01, and so far, I am here for it. We've gotten 3 episodes of 01 at this point as I am recording this, and I was very happy with all of them, and I wanted to give just sort of my entire thoughts on what we've got so far, how I felt this worked as an introduction. I was going to do this after 2 episodes, and then some things didn't happen in episode 2, so I waited till episode 3, and I feel like I have enough now that I can talk about everything I really want to talk about. So with that, there's a lot to talk about. It's a new Rider show. I will say, going into 01, I was very excited. I thought everything looked promising aesthetically. I thought we were looking at a pretty cool premise. I thought, a lot of it still looks Heisei, because there's a big talk of like, oh, the Reiwa era, what's going to change with Kamen Rider? And I figured it wouldn't be a radical shift, because it wasn't like there was a decade between, like with Showa and Heisei. But I think there are some things, mostly from a writing standpoint, that feel like they want to try and make this feel different, or at least monumental. So I think a big thing to talk about is just the premise of the show. We have a world where AI exists. AI has been figured out. There are sentient robots called Humagear that have been created by a corporation run by the Hiden family, and we are looking at Aruto Hiden, the grandson of the founder, who now finds himself as the president of the company with his grandfather's death. And already that is a wild premise that I actually think is in ways building on and calling back to some of the things that Kamen Rider itself played with. Kamen Rider has always been about the idea of like humanity and losing humanity for the greater good, or choosing humanity when you may have become a monster. The original Kamen Rider was made into a cyborg, and essentially it is viewed as having his humanity taken away. He's no longer human, but he still has the will of a human who wants to fight for justice and do good things and defeat those who are evil, even if they made him this way. So now we have, humans as our riders and our protagonists, as far as we know. But they live in this world where this new life essentially exists, this mechanical life, and a lot of the show is going to be about, are these Humagear people? Are they just machines? Do they have their own wills if you can reprogram them? Are they truly people if you can do that? And they have so much interesting room to play, and I'm really looking forward to what they're going to do. And I think these first 3 episodes have been very good at just establishing that in this world where AI is commonplace, not everyone is okay with it, not everyone is used to it, and not everyone thinks of it the same way, and I think that is huge. I also think, on a simpler note, the idea of having this company as our major setting and having our hero, who's still, in that usual early 20s age range of Kamen Rider lately, be the president is very fresh. I can't think of anything really comparable. We have had riders who have worked for larger organizations that have maybe made them the riders, and something like Blade, or even Hibiki is technically an organization like that. Zect might be as close as we're getting, but those companies were still functionally different, and our heroes were never in this role. Those companies were outside of them, maybe antagonistic, or just kind of the basic support system framework for them. This is very different, as we now have someone who is thrown into the head position at the company who is behind everything. They are behind the AI that exists. I'm sure we're going to learn about deeper connections to the villains that we've seen so far. There are mysteries that abound already about things they've done. And he has no context, is the biggest thing. All he knows is Grandpa has the company that made the robots, and his personal experience with the ones he's been around. He doesn't know anything secret his grandfather might have done. He doesn't know about any of the bigger tragedies, or at least the details that his grandfather might have been privy to, and maybe even people at the company might have been privy to. As of now, it doesn't seem like they are, but who's to say this early on? So he's going to be making decisions purely based on just his ideals and what he thinks, and he's probably at some point going to discover some darker truths about the company and maybe his grandfather But I think what's going to come through is who he is as a person, and who he is as a person has been shown to be a kind-hearted, more or less innocent boy in all of this. And also, just in this company premise, the villains are terrorists. You could argue that anytime the villains are human-helmed, that technically might qualify, but they're very explicit about it here. They've said it, and I assume that is a translation. Again, I don't know if there's a word that was said when it was translated as terrorist that could go another way, but it's been marketed as such for the most part. And that's just such a direct, interesting angle to domestic terrorism is what we're calling this. And, already there's talk about, like, they want to make humanity extinct. Their name, Metsubo Jinrai Net, or .net, they don't say the dot. The word for extinction is in there. The early Overtime episodes, which is what I've been watching, translated it with Extinction Thunderstrike. They did stop translating it. I don't know if something official was put out, but they're trying to make humanity extinct, and we have no evidence that the two main guys aren't human. And all of that is fascinating and interesting, and there's a lot of potential, and it's very early. And if you've ever listened to me talk about this kind of thing, you know that I don't think this early of a show is necessarily how you can judge how the rest of it's gonna be, but there is undeniably potential and interesting things going on. So to talk about the protagonist a little more, we have Aruto Hiden, and he is just this amazing doofus. He wants to be a stand-up comedian. He's awful at it. He just makes bad puns and has these weird over-the-top mannerisms that aren't really funny, and the point is that he's not really funny, but that's his dream. His dream is for people to smile and laugh because of him, and there's a very strong element here about dreams, and that is what he bases everything he does on, is fulfilling his dreams and helping others with their dreams. In the very first episode, he tells the monster to stop laughing at a human's dream, and how you can't just go by its dictionary definition. And we've seen dream theming before. Kamen Rider Phai's did a lot with it. O's, in a sense, did a lot with it when they talked about people's desires and what they really want, especially the episode with, I think, the unicorn Yummy, who could steal your dream. And they did make a distinction between dream and desire, which was interesting there. Here we have, Aruto already in a spot where he's like, I guess I can accomplish my dream in a different way right now. And I'm curious to see later on if during the show he starts feeling this call to go back to comedy the way he wanted to fulfill his dream, or if maybe he'll find this is more fitting for him. He's also, just a fun, silly, comedic character. He's clearly in over his head with this company. He's never had any job like this. He's the kind of guy who's late to his stand-up gigs. He has no idea what his family's company did, and now he's in charge of all of it because he accepted the powers that go along with being president of being a Kamen Rider. You have to be one to be the other, and he wanted to help people enough from, these attacks by these monsters and these terrorists that, it's fine, I'll shoulder all the burdens I have to for this. And that just speaks to a strength of character that I think is good to already show early on. Also, a minor thing, or maybe it's a major thing, Aruto's actor, his voice is unlike a lot of riders we've had, and I think that's good. There is this, it's higher, it's kind of nasal almost, and so far he's, been a delightful actor, and his delivery coupled with his voice just kind of makes him stand out. And that's not to say, every rider sounds the same necessarily, but I do think there was something about his performance and his casting that is just a little different, and I think it lends itself well to just a uniqueness of his performance and how he is portraying this character. I think what's also important is everyone in this world has their own views on the Humagear, on the AI, and for him, they are, not only are they good, they are important, and they are one of humanity's dreams. They exist to help humanity, to make humanity's lives better, but he also sees them as essentially their own people. They are individuals to him who can have their own dreams and can have hearts, And he even said that out loud. Am I the only one who thinks they might actually have hearts? And a lot of this might be tied to the fact that we've seen in the flashbacks his dad was a Humagir, which I don't remember if this was officially stated. I believe it's his real father passed away and a Humagir was built in his father's likeness. I feel like that was officially stated. I couldn't find anything at a quick glance, but either way, you know, a Humagir who was his father was there for him and saved his life during that attack that we've seen in the flashbacks. And that is clearly going to lend itself to how he feels about them, but also all his interactions with them. Even just the chef in episode 3, he believes in them and their ability to benefit humanity, but also cares about them as people. Anytime one of them has become a monster, he wants to save that person. You know, he doesn't want to destroy them, and he wants to restore them if he can. And there's talk about, you know, you can restore them from a backup, and that's not the same thing to him. They're not exactly the same person if that happens. So I think out the gate, a strong protagonist who stands out, who isn't perfect, has a lot of flaws, but he is fun, and fundamentally he has a lot of solid core beliefs and ideals that I think will carry him through the show well. On a contrasting note in certain ways, but not necessarily in all, is our secondary rider, Isamu Fuwa, who is Kamen Rider Vulcan. He is a member of AIMS, a government organization tasked with taking out rogue AI should they arise. And certainly, strength of conviction he has in common with Aruto. However, his conviction is to be racist towards robots. It is not without reason. He was at the Daybreak Town incident that has been in the backdrop already of many things that are happening in the show, and he was the sole survivor of his class, maybe his entire school, chased out by an army of evil Humagir, seemingly hacked. We don't have many details on that yet. And that has driven who he is seemingly for the rest of his life. And he wants them all exterminated. He has not been quiet about that. He has not been secretive about that. He hates them and he wants them dead. He is hot-headed. He disobeys orders, but his strength of will gets him through that. You know, he has to force open his Progrise key to actually transform. And we even see in episode 3, he had to kind of do it again. It seems like he technically still hasn't been given permission. So he is a hard contrast to Aruto for the Humagir side of things. A little detail, though, that I think is fantastic is he thinks Aruto is funny. He has to stifle laughter when Aruto makes jokes around him, and I cannot wait for them to hang out more. And when they eventually ally, oh, it's going to be so painful in the best way, and I'm very excited for it. Now, we have a third rider out the gate in Yua Yaiba, also a member of AIMS. She is the tech advisor and developer for AIMS. She created the Shot Riser, which is the gun and belt for him and for her. She is Kamen Rider Valkyrie, and she is an interesting contrast to the other two in that she is calm and cool-headed. She's the only one between the three of them who has a clue about anything. She thinks the Humagir are good, but she also thinks they're just tools. She thinks if one dies, you can just back them up, and that's not a problem, that they are here for our benefit, but they are only here for our benefit. And she has no qualms about using them that way. When she hacks the chef at the sushi restaurant so she can see things and not just give her order, it lends itself to being sort of a middle ground between the two, but some of her ideals are just a third point that is not with or against, really. And I'm very curious about where they're going to go with that, especially because we also know she is reporting to someone else in the shadows who we don't know if they're part of AIMS or if they're a separate party altogether. And that is very interesting. You know, we've seen in the field, she is a field agent for starters. She's not just the tech person. She is in the field and as active as Vulcan and the other members of AIMS. She technically outranks him when it comes to the stuff with the Shot Riser. I don't know if she outranks him outright or if she just has all the authority when the Shot Riser is involved. He never listens. And I like that she showed him up very easily when she debuted her rider form. And really, all I ask is that she survive this show. I don't want to watch another female rider die. We can keep them, Toei. This is me telling you. Now, we can keep them. So another one of our main characters is Izu, who is the presidential aide for the company. She is a Humagear. She is sort of an all-around assistant secretary. She is always with Aruto. She can basically look up anything for him, do anything he needs. And so far, I think she has been a delightful companion. She lends herself to a lot of humor at times, because I've found that of the Humagear we've seen, she's actually one of the most robotic at times. The Humagear aren't characterized fully like Data from Star Trek, I guess is the best characterization I can think of. A lot of them feel more human out the get-go. I feel like she is more like Data, where there's a little less emotion there. I think she speaks a little more properly, and maybe that is just because of the role she was designated with, and maybe that will change as she is with Aruto and learns from him. There are some weird things in the opening sequence for the show that imply she could have done something bad, or she could be based on someone who did something. We see her with a different hair length. We see what looks like Humagear blood on her hands. There's some weird stuff going on there, and I don't think you can really speculate on any of it yet. I just hope they use her well and write her as a very realized character. I think other than just being, a female side character, and there is just a possibility that she could get kind of screwed over just for focus, I think the nature of the robotic assistant can possibly be kind of creepy in the wrong writer's hands, and I just hope they don't do anything that makes her feel like she's being used for the benefit of others, and I'm used very literally. I don't want them objectifying her, again, very literally, because that would just be both a waste and gross, and it's the kind of thing you can fetishize very easily, and I would like a fully realized female supporting character, because we've had those, and let's just keep doing that. On the villain side, we have two actual characters in Horobi and Jin. Horobi is the cool, calm, and collected one. He seems to be the brains behind everything, the one who's working on the tech and giving the keys to Jin to go and distribute. He's the one who's talked a little more about their machinations, about this thing called the Arc and Singularity and all of this. We don't have a lot yet, and I will not get into detail, but if you've kept up with the promotional material and even the opening sequence, there's going to be a development with both of them eventually that I'm looking forward to quite a lot. But for now, we don't have a ton. Jin has been more of the man on the ground. He is the one who actually finds the Humagears to hack and convert. He is this weird, creepy, happy-go-lucky kind of villain who's delightful to watch, but he's so disturbing. That first time he shoots the one without even looking while he's laughing the whole time is just a great setup for who this character is, and it's horrifying. But I'm looking forward to seeing both of them get more active in their roles and seeing what more there is to them beyond these initial personalities. I think that could maybe be the one fear, is that they end up a little one-note. There's no evidence that will happen now. It's just too early to tell. I just hope they are expanded on, and when we start learning about more of who they are and what they're doing and why they're doing it. We do have a few side characters who are sort of just off to the side. We have the vice president of the company, who his shtick is basically he thought he would be president. He's mad that it's Aruto. He's going to try and get him fired. He's got a buddy who's in on it with him too, and his Humagear aide also seems to be in on it. They're being played for laughs. I think it's going to stay that way. I wondered if they'd maybe lean into being more villainous, and that's still a possibility, but for now, they do seem like they're going to be just goofy. Even in the opening, the joke is just the portrait falling on them, so I think that's where that's going to stay for now, and I think that's a fine angle. I think with the company stuff, you'll have to balance a little bit of who's important right now, the people at the company or just the things Aruto is doing on his own time, even if it's on behalf of the company. But so far, I think they've been mixed in well. especially to help establish things, because they do know about the company and you do need them to explain things sometimes. So I also want to talk about the aesthetic of the show, and let me just say, it's so good. This show looks great. The suits are very clean and techy, and the powers are so simple. It's just an animal that does one power, and that's so nice and clean and simple, and I'm so happy about that, honestly. The Progrise keys are a cool gimmick. Electronics in a gimmick from a toy perspective are always nice, because it means you're not limited as to what you can make. But I do feel like they interact with the belts and the electronics in the belts enough that it doesn't feel like the belts are glorified button pushers like the gamer driver. The actual tech and weaponry also looks good and is very cleanly fit with the suits. The briefcase weapons are a really silly and kind of great idea. I really like that when 01 changes forms, it's that base suit, and the first animal he turns into, everything moves around. So like if he always starts in Rising Hopper, the Hopper armor bits will move for the next animal. But the aesthetic for the Shot Riser riders is very different. It's not as modular. So when they do a different suit, it's pretty much going to be just an entirely new suit, it looks like. Also, Vulcan punches the bullet, and it's the coolest henshin I've seen in a very long time. I also think just having a variety of changers already, in the show we've got 2 belts, and one of them's also a gun. And once again, I won't get into details, but there have been some official reveals of future transformation devices coming, as well as some leaks. Be careful if you're not looking for these kind of things. There are a lot of things leaked, and if you don't like to be spoiled in that stuff, watch where you're looking, because a lot of it's coming out. But it's going to be a big toy line, going to be an expensive toy line, but I do like it a lot, and I think the aesthetic in the show of it is very good. And there's a little touches too. The beaming from the satellite is cool. The data transport when he first transforms is cool. When the animals, which are great, become the armor, the lines connecting them to his suit are DNA strands, which implies more than just wearing a suit. It's that transformation element of Kamen Rider that we all love. And the villain side also looks good. The Magia, which it's like Ma and Gear, but the way you would say gear, like Magia, and so far I guess it's officially spelled like that, Magia. I don't know how I feel about that one, but the monsters look great. Humanoid monsters, which is usually what you're gonna get lately, all based on extinct animals, is a great idea to contrast the normal quote-unquote animals that are being used for our riders. I do hope we get a lot of them. Rider has done this thing lately where they don't have a lot of monsters of the week for designs, and sometimes it's good because the plot pushes along better, but then sometimes it just kind of feels like, oh, okay, we've just got like 3 suits and that's all we're going to use. And I would love to see them make a bunch of these. Just aesthetically, they're cool. Their belt is also just kind of the Ryuki belt, which is funny, and I wonder if it might actually be a retool of that. I'm sure they're going to sell it eventually anyways, so we'll see. Also, when they transform, it's horrifying. All the wiring or piping or whatever it is coming out of their mouth, and just, the disconcerting nature of the evil Humagear is amazing and great. I love how inhuman they get when they're evil. It's a good contrast, but it also can reinforce Vulcan's ideas that these things are just killing machines, and that's going to keep that clash of ideals going, and that excites me from a writing standpoint, and I hope they use it well. It's also interesting that Ames thinks Autoto is a Humagear when he's 01, because he's not revealing that identity, and of course he's not saying that he's not. They are doing that thing where like he's just not saying the right like 3 words to make them listen. If I have a fear right now, it's that some of the conflict in the show is just going to come from your classic misunderstandings, where the only reason there's a misunderstanding is someone hasn't explained themselves and they've had a chance to. I really hope they don't do that. It's early and it's hard to say, and the opening shows them working together, which makes me hope they'll do that sooner than later. And we also have with Vulcan kind of what they were doing with Kamen Rider Mach, if you saw Drive, with again that robot racism. And I think this show is establishing it better, because I liked Drive. I thought Mach's character arc wasn't great, and I hope that they do something better with Vulcan, just in terms of how he grows as a character and when he grows as a character, but we'll see. One more aesthetic thing, the actual opening. The song is very fun. It is performed by the bassist for Luna Sea, who just goes by Jay, and Takanori Nishikawa, who is also known as TM Revolution. I'm told TMR is a big deal. I don't keep up with enough anime to really know his work, but everyone's very excited about it, so that's good. It's a good song. It's not my favorite off the bat. Most of these openings do grow on me over time, but it's definitely good. Like, it's not one that I didn't like at first. And also, any song that just opens with saying the title character's name 3 million times is great. The actual opening sequence is awesome. I think the visuals are great. If I'm being honest, if they just never added shots of the upgrade forms to it, I'd kind of be okay with it. Like, they're probably gonna have to add some things eventually, but like, it's great now, and I wouldn't really cut that much from it. So I hope when they have to start changing the visuals, they don't accidentally undermine anything. I don't expect that, but I guess you never know. I do want to talk about the Humagear as a whole, and not just the stuff I've said about the philosophical stuff for other characters, but just the way they're portrayed. They're more human than I expected. I mentioned that Izu and Shesta, who is the aide to the vice president, are that kind of very robotic Data from Star Trek personality I sort of expected. A lot of the others are very personable and they feel very human, even if they're just fulfilling their role. The barber we saw in that one scene, the sushi chef, kind of did both pretty well. The comedian who just makes his abs explode, other than having to be a comedian, like even afterwards, just like, he was reviewing the footage of what he did, but it was making him smile. And I think one of the best things about all of it is when they have the belt put on them to make them a monster, they always get like one line of resistance, and I really appreciate that, and it's really expanding them. We also had Mamoru, the security guard, who, he explains his purpose to Aruto, and that's a little robotic, but when Aruto bandages his arm up, he has that moment where he looks at it and he smiles, and it clearly just made him feel good in a very human way that doesn't feel like part of his programming. And I really like that. If they were all very rote and simple, I think relating to them and their reason for existing might have actually been harder. They're not all chase as another Drive comparison. They're more actually like the villains, like Brain and Heart, because they were very emotional, and now their thing was they only had one emotion each to really express most of the time. But I like that writing better, and they feel more like these living creatures who have sentience, and it's gonna make, again, the in-universe debates about them much more interesting. Also, the earpieces, a great little way to show that someone is a Humagear without having to spend a lot of money. And I like that the old, seemingly prototype versions are just headphones. That's a really nice touch and an easy design thing to work with. So right now there are some mysteries in the show as well, and it's so early that we only have teases, but some things that are definitely going to get talked about. This Daybreak Town is going to be a huge deal. The Ark, which seems like it might be that satellite that crashed there, possibly the predecessor to the satellite they're using now, Zaya, I don't know how it's really meant to be pronounced. And whoever Yua is talking to, playing chess, talking about how the technology for 01 was apparently lost at Daybreak Town, but that was a lie, because she saw the shark progress key get made. All of this is so early in the teasing phase, but it's being set up, and as long as they can follow through and deliver, I think you're going to have some really meaty stuff to work with. And overall, I think that's where we are, is that it's so early. And I am never the kind of person who's like, this show will definitely be great or it'll definitely be bad. Toku can change. There are shows that have won me and lost me earlier than this and later than this. And for now, I think you have to just take it one episode by a time. But I think the potential is very high. I think they have a lot of great things they can work with. And I'm really, really hoping that they can follow through and deliver and just keep everything strong. You know, we're going to have a pretty big cast of important characters, and I think we've seen Rider shows that can handle that well. We've got talent behind the show that has done some good work, in my opinion, and I am having a really good time so far. I thought the premiere was top-notch. I think episode 2 and 3 have kept up the energy very well. I don't know if we're going to be burning through that early budget soon, because some of the fights have been very good, and sometimes that's because they can afford to make it that way at the beginning to sell you. I don't think we're relying on that. I think we've seen some good camera work. I think the action hasn't just relied on CG or anything like that. And I think they can keep that up from just a direction standpoint. And I think if we are looking at some of the higher budget stuff for now, we won't really suffer if we lose it, but that's still up in the air. But really, everything so far is promising to me, and I want it to stay that way. I think, you know, the first Reiwa series does need to kind of hit it out of the park. Again, I don't mind if some things are going to feel pretty Heisei, because that era change in this case is more of a symbolic and arguably maybe surface level thing. The Showa to Heisei change was the return of Kamen Rider. This wasn't just, hey, new emperor. This show was gone, and we're going to try and bring it back. And when they did that, they nailed it. Now this, you know, we did have Zio as this, you know, farewell to Heisei, and now this is going to be something fresh and new. Not to say we won't see Zio and Heisei stuff again, but this is more... They have to try and make that impact that Kuga had when Rider came back, but Rider isn't gone, and people have more direct comparisons that just happened. And I think that's a challenge they face, and I don't want them to overextend themselves trying to beat it out. And hopefully, they will just rely on the concepts and the premises they've set up and just use it to make the strongest show they can, using that as a framework. But I think they are on the right track, and I'm definitely tuning in every week to see how it's going to be. With that, I will say I am not going episode by episode with this show. I wanted to do this and talk about how I feel about it at the beginning. I might do intermittent check-ins. I don't know when the right time for that will be, because I don't know the story structure of this show, but I just cannot do episode by episode for more than one show. Doing it for one show has honestly proven to be more difficult than I thought it would. I will try and finish Ryu Soldier, but I'm already admittedly falling behind on that. And I don't want to lessen my enjoyment of this stuff because I'm making it homework for myself, if that makes sense. So I will probably check in again before the show actually ends, just to talk about where it is. But again, I don't know when that'll be or what will prompt me to do it. It's sort of up in the air. But I definitely wanted to talk about how I feel about it from the get-go, which is very positively, and that's awesome, and I cannot wait to see more. And I hope you're enjoying it as well. Please let me know how you feel about it, if you love it, if you hate it, if things are just weird and up in the air and you don't know yet. Please let me know. I love to talk about this stuff. I love to hear about this stuff, and I love to watch this stuff, and I'm looking forward to watching even more of this in the future. So until then, I hope you all have a wonderful day or evening or whenever you're listening to this. I hope you keep tuning in to me and to these wonderful toku shows that we watch, and I will catch you next time when we're talking about whatever it is, maybe even Kamen Rider 01010101010101010101010101.